Good evening. I'm Councillor Claudine Russell, the Chairman of the Maidstone Joint Transportation Board, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the Board. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anybody else be recording the proceedings? I ask just so the people at this meeting will know if this is happening. Can't see any indication. So if the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Ahead of this meeting's commencement, I would like to remind the board that there are no officers in attendance from Kent County Council for the following items. Item 12, the Maidstone Integrated Transport Plan. Item 14, the Kent Bus Service Improvement Plan and National Bus Strategy Funding Update. And item 15, implementation of the 2004 Traffic Management Act and ANPR cameras update. Any questions from board members will be collated and sent to the relevant officers with written responses to be provided and shared with the board. Okay, moving to this evening's agenda, item number 1, apologies. Apologies have been received from Councillors Grigg, Holmes, Natchball, Prendergast, Sams, Councillor Cook and Parish Representative Councillor Ash. Are there any other apologies? I can't see any. So item number 2, can any substitutes state their attendance, please? Councillor Burton.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Burton substituting for Councillor Mrs. Natchball.
Thank you. Councillor Garton.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Substituting for Councillor Peter Holmes.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Stuart Jeffrey substituting for Councillor Tom Sands.
Lovely, thank you. So item 3, we don't have any urgent items this evening. Before we start, I propose a slight change to the order of business for this evening, and I propose to change to take item 16, which is Maidstone Highways Works Programme, directly after item 12, which is the Maidstone Integrated Transport Plan, to allow the KCC Highways Manager to answer questions on her report before the other substantive reports where there are no officers, so then she can leave the meeting. Is this agreed? Thank you. So she's joining us online, so your report will be after item 12. So item 4, are there any visiting members? If you'd just like to let the board know which item you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, Councillor Cleaser for items 12, 13, 14 and possibly 16 once I've had a chance to read it.
Lovely, thank you. Item number 5, are there any disclosures by members or officers? No, I can't see any, thank you. Item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Councillor Burton?
I think it's fair to say that over years I've been lobbied many times on all aspects of the MITP.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey, I had next.
I've been lobbied on council item 12.
Thank you. Sorry, coming back to Councillor Clark.
Item 11.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Item 12.
Sorry, item 12. I'm sorry, it was 11 and 12. Sorry.
12. Okay. And nobody. Oh, Councillor Cannon.
11 and 12.
Thank you. Oh, a couple more. Councillor Carter. 11 and 12, and Councillor Parfitt-Reid 11 and 12.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 7. I move that all items been taken in public. Is this agreed? Thank you. Item 8 is the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 18th of October 2023, pages 1 to 7 in your report. Are there any comments on the accuracy of these minutes? Councillor Clark.
Yes, there was one point where talking about the Cranbourne Avenue closure, it mentioned that the Kent Highways cabinet member, page 6, 4th paragraph from the bottom, with the local ward member having been consulted. Well, that junction actually has 6 ward members. So I wonder if that could be clarified, perhaps with a single ward member.
Except,
I mean, I'm
I
a
think
ward-
that was meant to be the county councillor. So obviously, yeah, the
Oh, if you
reference to
change it to
ward
county
there is
councillor, that
wrong.
would be fine.
Yeah, so
But
we'll
it's
change.
It's
Yeah.
inaccurate as it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah, correct. We'll change that to say that it was the county councillor member. Thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes? Nope. So obviously with that adjustment, I move that the minutes are agreed. Is this agreed? Lovely. So moving on to item 9, presentation of petitions. We've got one petition this evening, as outlined on your agenda papers, and Councillor Dinesh Khadka is in attendance to present this petition, and he is able to speak for a period of up to 5 minutes. So handing over to him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members. I was here back in 2015 presenting my petition, similar issues, but further down. But tonight, I'm here to present the petitions for reinstating the speed camera in Lewes Road. The camera was switched off about 5 years ago, and 2 years ago, without any consultations, without any communication with the residents or the local councillor, the camera was removed. We have been in contact with the KCC, and we've been informed back in 2022, in fact, in August, that I'm just reading the sentence given by KCC. KCC are still proposing to undertake further studies into the traffic flows, but since then we have not heard anything. In July 2007, there was a in-depth consultations was carried out. By then, the board was called Maidstone board. 2 pages in-depth studies was given the reason justification why the speed camera was needed in A229. I'm gonna read the couple of sentences from that studies done in back in 2007. Number 2, to prevent the vehicle from approaching the sharp bend into the acceleration at a high speed, the measure was essential. Number 4, the speeding issues also cause concern to residents of the acceleration who have seen the crashes barrier at the bend stuck and damaged. And also, the report mentions in the last 5 years, there have been 4 serious and 3 slight crashes between the footbridge and Acceleration Junction, and also 1 serious incident. That justifies the reason why the speed camera was there in the first place. Back in 2011, the local newspaper did very good investigations reporting why speed camera are there for the first place. And the speed camera at the Lewes Road was one of the highest active camera in the Kent. The newspaper states on the 24th of August 2011, the A229 Lewes Road near Maidstone, we saw serious accident fall from 9 to 2. That further endorsed that why the speed camera was there in the first place. I'd like to bring the attention again. The newspaper on the 27th of Jan 2012, it talked about the devices situated on A229 Lewes Road is snapped 1,659 offender in 2010. So 484 more than the second most prolific camera in the county. To summarize, Madam Chair, the camera was there in the first place, doing the job it should be doing. There has been contributory factor in Hill Road, as well as the Shell Crescent by the road crossing. I would like to reiterate, when it comes to doing the survey or manipulating the statistic data, the residents and local representative must be consulted fairly and transparently. Finally, I would like to emphasize that when the speed camera are there, there's a reason why they are there in the first place. If they are decided or needs consultation, it needs wider consultations, and then the stat and data got to be justified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadker. Just within your 5 minutes there. I think it's worth reiterating to the board what the wording of the petition was that's been presented. So we've got speed camera at the bottom of Lewes Road at the junction with Shields Crescent at the start of the one-way system was in place for many years and visibly slowed the speed of traffic. Its removal has clearly seen an increase in the speed of the traffic approaching this junction. We, the undersigned residents, would ask that Kent County Council, working with the police, arrange for the speed camera to be replaced as soon as possible. Given the wording of the petition, there are two options open to the board this evening. So the first one, we can consider it at the meeting, but that would then mean that we wouldn't get a report on the petition or what happens with it once it wouldn't go to KCC because it was just dealt with here. And I think given the wording, it would be more appropriate to refer the petition without a discussion tonight to KCC and ask for an update report to then come back to the JTB so that we can look at what was done with that petition. So if everyone was minded that that would be the most appropriate way, given what the petition asks for, I would be happy to move that from the chair. We'll be referring the petition without discussion to the appropriate KCC officer and asking for an update report to come back to the JTB. Seconded by Councillor Burton. Oh, yes, of course.
Can we also ask them why it's removed in the first place?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Ask them why the camera was removed in the first place.
Yes, yeah.
And the reason for?
Yeah.
Do we know how many people have signed the petition, just quickly?
$123. So votes in favour of referring it then to the appropriate committee member with the added wording is that why it was removed in the first place, and then we will get an update report covering all of that back to the JTB. Yeah, sorry, hands up again. I'm just checking if that was unanimous or not. No. No. Yeah. Okay. Votes against? Abstentions? Sorry, I didn't catch which way you voted, Councillor Cooling. You do. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so moving on then. Thank you, Councillor Cadker. To item 10, which is the question and answer session from members of the public. We have 7 questions from members of the public this evening, and the total time available for our question and answer session this evening is 30 minutes. If I could ask the member of public, when I call you, if you could kindly come up to the table at the front there, and if you press the middle button that looks like a face with some kind of arrows coming out like it's speaking, that will set your microphone going, and then you have time to answer your question. So question number 1 is from Sue Gooding. Can't see anyone moving to step forward. Okay, what I'll do is I'll ask our Democratic Services Officer to read that out for Sue Gooding. Thank you.
Yeah, question 1 from Sue Gooding. Would it be possible to have a yellow box or keep clear sign at the end of Northview on Lewes Road by QuickFit? When residents come up from the town and try to turn right into Northview, we are often holding up traffic right back to the lights at Armstrong Road as cars are queuing in front of the access of to this road, and we cannot turn in and can often take 5 or 10 minutes as once lights change and cars start moving, we cannot get across both lanes as traffic is now coming down from Sutton Road.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. By the way, the answers tonight have been provided by KCC, so although they're not in attendance, the answers are directly from them. Thank you for your comments. Your suggestion will be included within the review of the next steps for the Wheatsheaf junction. As Sue Gooding's not here in person, she doesn't have a supplementary, but we will ensure that the answer is emailed back to her. And at this point, I say welcome to Councillor Hastie. Have you got any declarations, pecuniary interest or declarations of lobbying?
I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. So question number 2 this evening is from Gordon King. If you'd like to come forward and ask your question to the board.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Right, my first question. Having just accessed the KCC website, looking at road closures, specifically I was looking for Sutton Road to see what was closed. I suddenly find out that on that website, when you go to their provider, which is One Network, it stated that Cranbourne Avenue was still on temporary closure until the 1st of April this year, which was rather interesting. Please could KCC clarify the status of this closure, and if it remains temporary, what opportunities will there be for the residents to urge decision makers to open it again?
Thank you very much for pointing this out. The experimental traffic regulation order was made permanent on the 20th of September 2023. One Network is now being updated to say permanent road closure, works required to formalise the closure. Do you have a supplementary question arising out of your original question or my reply?
Yes. Right, supplementary question. Since we've had Cranbourne Avenue closed, there's increase in traffic flow through West Park and South Park roads. These roads were built when the estate was built, and one suspects that the structure of the road is not capable of carrying the traffic load it's now carrying. Is KCC going to look at rebuilding these roads? One added bit is it's quite interesting that once you come off of what were council houses to the private houses in Willow Way, the road surface is a lot better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think what would probably be best with that is if I get a detailed response to your question. I'm not a highways expert,
Yeah.
but yeah, you'll want that response.
Thank
and
you.
I'll get that sent to you. Thank you. Question number 3 this evening we have from Anthony Mason, if you'd like to step forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As a fairly new resident of over a year to the area of South Maidstone, and following the recent spates of accidents to the Plains Avenue Lewes Road junction, would the committee please let us know when traffic lights will be installed to prevent a further accident occurring, which sooner or later will result in a fatality?
Thank you. The Plains Avenue junction remains under review as part of the wider Lewes Road corridor, and will continue to monitor the nature of any injury incidents where they are reported to Kent Police. Improvements such as extending the yellow box marking to the northbound carriageway of Lewes Road and extending the double lines in Plains Avenue are being assessed. Do you have a supplementary question arising out of your original question or my reply?
Can I just speak freely for a minute?
I'm afraid you can't. It has to be a supplementary arising.
I took my life in my hands.
I'm
pulling out of that turning.
I'm really sorry.
Something needs to be done.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mason. Moving on, we have got question number 4 from Kinga Hammersley. If you'd like to step forward, please. Kinga.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to ask my question, because last time I was denied it. So what was the specification given to the company or person commissioned to assess the impact of the experimental closure on Cranbourne Avenue?
Thank you. The improvements options report produced by Charles and Associates has been available on the KCC website since the 20th of September 2023, when the decision to make the closure permanent was publicly announced. Do you have a supplementary question arising out of your original question or my reply?
That is not an answer. There's no specification on it, on that particular document. So can I please have the specification given to the company who has done the assessment on the road closure and the effects of it?
I just want to be clear what you're asking for. The tender document given to the company, I'm not sure would be able to be provided, but would you be asking
So
for that?
if I would like to know the effects of something and ask somebody to survey the area or assess what's happened, then I would be giving that person or that company objectives as to what I would like.
Objectives, I think, will be absolutely fine. So
Yeah.
what I will do is I will ask the question what the objectives were that were given to the company commission to assess the impact of the experimental closure of Cranbourne Avenue, and I will get your response back from KCC, and we'll make our Democratic Services officer from NBC will make sure that you have that response. Thank you.
Okay, and I do have a supplementary.
That was your supplementary, I'm afraid.
No, that was my original question. That hasn't been answered. There's no specifications on that document that they have or whoever published that.
I really want to hear the public, because obviously I know
I am
you're here
the
for a
public.
point. And so what I'm saying, what I am saying is please go ahead and ask another supplementary question.
So
A further supplementary question.
May I ask a further question?
A supplementary question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and what are the conclusions of this report? Because they are not on the report. And where can that be found?
I think what I'll probably do then, because it's two parts of the same. So if I ask for the objectives,
where is the evidence?
If I ask for the objectives of the company commission to assess the impact and the conclusions of this report and where you can find this information.
Yeah, where is the conclusions?
Okay. Yeah, lovely. I've got that. Thank you. Have you got? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And when can I expect this?
KCC don't work to our Maidstone timescales, but we will get you that response as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, so who can provide me with, is there another supplementary question that when can I have this?
Our Democratic Services officer will get you the response and we'll get it to you. Thank you. Question 5 I have from Andrew Hammersley. If you would like to step forward and ask your question, thank you. Oh, sorry, your microphone isn't on. Do you want to start again? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening again. Just want to say that my question has been heavily modified from the original one that I sent out. And I've heard the word democracy mentioned several times tonight. You guys all need a dictionary because there is no democracy here, but I'll be coming back to that a bit later on. I have my statement. So the modified question is, how many residents of Shepway and the Loose Road area did Neil Baker consult with before taking his unilateral decision to close Cranbourne Avenue?
I just would like to say that all questions have to go via the proper officer.
I know they do.
If a question has been asked in exactly the same format, it cannot come forward again in exactly the same format. But
that's where there's a mistake, isn't it? Because that means the public is not getting a chance to speak up. This was heavily modified. So what is the answer?
The experimental traffic regulation order was advertised publicly as required by regulation. The KCC consultation directory, Let's Talk Kent, indicated that the scheme would be reviewed so that the council could make the decision to make the order permanent, amend or abandon it. Details, including the scheme plan, could be found in the public notice and the statement for reason document on the Let's Talk Kent consultation page. Any person wishing to object or support the order before it was made permanent was asked to complete a response form available to download on the consultation directory between the 18th of March 2022 and the 19th of September 2022.
So can I have my answer? When did Neil Baker actually consult with anybody? There is no answer in that. He hasn't even visited. He hasn't consulted anybody. If I push the belt out, we're meant to have a KCC representative who hasn't actually consulted anybody. So yeah, I am angry about this. And I want everybody to know that.
Absolutely understand that.
This has been going on for years.
The board can see
it's
that
crazy.
you are angry, but this is a public meeting and we
I'm
do
public.
need to follow.
Meet with me.
I know, but with respect, this is an advisory board, as I believe I have emailed you before.
Shouldn't be.
KCC
Elected
are the
people representing us. I shouldn't have to be here tonight. You guys should be doing a job
If
for
you will
us.
let me speak, I am trying to do the job for you.
I'm
Please
trying to speak
believe
as well,
me.
and you have not come up with the answer I asked in this modified question.
I've not
It's a
come to the
sham.
answer that you've asked because KCC are the Highways Authority.
Where
So
are
the
they?
answers have
Where
to
are the
come through-
KCC officers tonight?
Well, they're obviously not here.
Why
which
not?
We have I'm not getting into a discussion. We'll have to close the meeting if we get into a discussion.
Close it then.
I'm really sorry. If we could come forward and you could sensibly get yourself to a point where I can get a question that can answer. I can get how many, so your actual question was how many residents did Neil Baker consult with? Neil Baker was not in post when this consultation was made. So the actual answer to your question is that 0 because he was not in post in that consultation. So I can ask him if he reviewed the documentation that was done under. I can ask how many people were consulted with for the actual consultation. And I will ask when he visited the area, absolutely. And I will get that back from you for KCC. If we are starting to just comment, I'm going to have to start again.
Okay.
So I'm really trying.
So are we.
Okay. I do appreciate that, please, believe me, I do. Right, so I'm going to, let me just check the wording because I don't want to miss it now. So I'm going to check how many residents of the Shepway and Lewes Road area were consulted with when the public consultation was open. And I'm going to ask when Neil Baker visited the area. Yeah, I've got that. Lovely. Thank you. Got that. Yeah, you got that. Lovely. Right. So next one, we have a question from Jeremy Day.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for listening. Then my question is: it's previously been stated that less traffic is using Plains Avenue after the closure of Cranbourne Avenue that might be expected because the traffic's been dissipated onto other routes. Have there been any studies on where this dissipated traffic has been moved to other choke points, causing even more problems than have been solved by the closure of Cranbourne Avenue?
Thank you. Prior to the closure of Cranbourne Avenue, traffic was drawn to the Wheatsheaf junction, slowing the overall traffic signal sequence and overloading Cranbourne Avenue itself. Since its closure, much of this traffic has naturally dissipated across local highway network, taking a wide variety of different routes depending on the individual start point and ultimate destination. The precise detail of this dissipation, is not known, beyond the recorded modest increase in vehicles using Plains Avenue to access Lewes Road. Do you have a supplementary question arising out of your original question or my reply?
Yeah, there's obviously lots of choke points like Plains Avenue, which has become a nightmare. There's also things like Postley Road joining in the one-way system. There's crossing Armstrong Road. There's all sorts of choke points. It must be making traffic worse. There needs to be, is there any plans to do a detailed evaluation of where all this traffic is going? Because it's obviously going to just make things worse everywhere else.
So your question.
So are there any plans to actually do the studies and work out if it's making anything worse, or if it just if it's making things better?
So we've got
these cars are going somewhere.
Plans to do a detailed traffic survey to see on the. Yeah, Are there any plans to do a traffic survey and evaluation on the road network in this area?
Yeah, I mean, has anyone from KCC actually ever bothered trying to drive through Maidstone in the rush hour?
I'm not, I'm not KCC. Then our last question this evening we have from Michelle James, please, if you'd like to step forward.
Is that on? Yeah.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
Right, I'm a bit nervous, so please bear with me.
Oh, don't worry, go for it.
Since the new traffic lights at Armstrong Road have been implemented and causing a bottleneck on the Lewes Road, and with, in my opinion, wrong, ill-advised decision to close Cranbourne Avenue and making the Lewes Road onto one lane going into Maidstone, please can you explain why the health and safety of myself and all Lewes Road northbound, including Northview, have to risk their lives to gain access to on and off their drives?
Thank you. The A229 Lewes Road continues to be a very busy corridor serving thousands of journeys every day. The recent improvement to the Armstrong Road junction continues to be monitored, with adjustments to the sequencing being made as necessary. The Wheatsheaf and Plains Avenue junctions remain under review as part of the wider Lewes Road corridor, and we will continue to monitor the nature of any injury incidents where they're reported to Kent Police. Do you have a supplementary question arising out of either your original question or my reply?
Can you please tell me when it was last monitored, as this has been going on since 2020, since moving Maidstone mattered?
So I will get for you when it was last monitored. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And that concludes our question and answer session for members of the public this evening. Moving on to item number 11, which is the Maidstone Joint Transportation Board work programme. I've got visiting member Councillor Cleater to speak on this first. 11, did you say 11? Oh, apologies. Sorry. So we don't have any KCC officer here to introduce the report this evening, but it is your substantive report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Clark. Oh, yes, of course. Apologies, the work programme. Your work programme is agenda item 11, quite correct. And you've got a point to raise on it.
Okay, thank you. The work programme obviously has the main item that one of the main items we're discussing this evening, standing item of the Maidstone Integrated Transport Package. I was the person that made the proposal originally to make that every JTB we would get an update on the junction improvement plans, and time again we just see a cut and paste of the same report over and over and over again, and quite often KCC is not present, so we struggle to even really see this as a genuine standing item. It's almost just something that's disregarded. One of the questions that I asked last Joint Transport Board is how much money has of the CELEP funds and the developer contribution funds. I think it was originally set out as £13.9 million and overall, and 8.9 million from the government via CELEP. That was for the Wheatsheaf. That was for Cole Harbour Roundabout, Lewes Road, Armstrong Road, Parkway, Cripple Street, Borton Lane, Ashford Road junction with Willington Street, Sutton Road junction with Willington Street. The question I asked last time, which I was told by officers that I would get a feedback on, was what's happened to that money? We're in inflationary times. How much of it has been spent? How much is left over? Is there a shortfall? Now, I didn't get any update at all, and KCC is not present this evening, which is very frustrating. And when I contacted the democratic officer midway through the time between the last meeting and now, I was told that it's really down to KCC to come back with that information to me directly, which they haven't done. Now, can we add that element to this work item, because I feel that we should receive, we get to audit what's going on with Maidstone's integrated transport package. We should be able to audit what's going on with the money, because this money was collected and it's been sitting there for years.
Okay, I think I've got your point, which is
and
that
I
you want
really
to know
feel that next
how much
time
money of the
we should
Senate
have a
funds is being
complete
used.
comprehensive update as to what's happening with the money and how much is left.
Within the, as a separate item, I just want to check as a separate item, because you were talking about the MITP standing item, or are you happy for it to be within that report?
I think that we should be able to monitor it. This is a standing item, and it's essentially early days. It was to develop what was going on with these schemes, but now we're in a mature phase and we've got this as a standing item. I think every month we should be able to monitor what's going on with the money.
Okay, sounds like separate item then would be probably best for that. But I'll just take Councillor Burton first.
Thank you, Chairman. I can help a little bit with this. You might recall I was the cabinet member at the time at Maidstone for planning and transport that won the 8.9 million. This was money that came down to us via the LEP. Now, that money, to my knowledge, largely sits unused. It's supplemented by additional Section 106 money. But why hasn't it been spent? I have to look around this room at councillors that are here and councillors that used to be here. And every time a scheme is put on the table, we say, oh, not that bit. Oh, not Cranbourne Avenue. Oh, not if you're going to take the bit of grass away in front of the shops. Oh, don't want to go anywhere near Willington Street and Sutton Road. There was a vote of this board that unanimously, apart from one abstention, which was myself, and I regret abstaining, I should have voted in, that said, we do not want the work to go ahead. Even though the officers give their professional advice that a lesser scheme achieves nothing. We had detailed traffic modelling. When I was chairing this board, I even asked them to put it into a graphic, and on that screen, they actually showed the progress of a car from A to B and with the scheme without, with their detailed professional understanding and knowledge, and you could see the benefit, and we said no. So I think we've got to wake up and accept that if you want to make an omelette, you probably are going to need to break an egg. And unless you start making the omelette, the money will sit there unspent. The 8.9 million is at risk. The LEP now ceases to exist. That unspent money at LEPs, and some extent, is going to be reallocated. Maidstone had just won some money from the LEP to do some other work to improve some of the property around Maidstone. But that money will go back in the pot, and as I understand it, under the new regime, it will go back into KCC's pot, with the new organisation of the Kent and Medway Economic Partnership giving advice and saying, yeah, we'll go and spend it on something else, because Maidstone has not embraced the improvements it needs.
I've got Councillor Carter next.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the South East LEP board many, many years ago when this money was allocated, and it was time limited in the time that it had to be utilised and delivered. And we must be way beyond that. And I think Brian's absolutely right. We need to report as to when it is going to be done, how much money is left in the jar. There was 106 contributions against the various schemes to go towards it. It is taking a ridiculous amount of time to get those schemes underway. I disagree fundamentally with Councillor Burton on the Sutton Road junction. You will recall that this JTB many years ago, and I've recounted it several times at this JTB, that we had traffic modelling done by the KCC company. I think it was Jacobs. And I asked the man there and then whether or not the housing development around where you used to live and I still live, and I declare an interest on that, whether the traffic impact of all the housing development on that Willington Street, Sutton Road junction, or the Sutton Road into the roundabout at the Wheatsheaf, would have a massive impact on traffic congestion. And that I asked the officer, the man from Jacobs, what sort of impact compared to other places in the country. He said it would have the most detrimental impact I've seen on many traffic surveys I've done over many years. And then Maidstone Borough Council then commissioned their own highways impact assessment from a different firm, who turned around and said it will have very little impact. Who do you believe? I mean, not in complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but the debate with the local community about the design of that junction, which was totally over the top, when there was a simpler solution to be made, which was put forward, that the officers were forced to take away and deliver, because it was recommended by the Transport Board at KCC and had the support of the JTB. So, you know, it's KCC Highways money that has come from the LEP with a bit of Section 106. I think we should know how much is allocated to each and individual scheme, and have highways officers here to tell us what the construction of those junction improvements will be over the next year or two, if there's still any money left to pay for them, because it may have all go back to government.
Right, so sorry, Councillor Burton, didn't see you there.
I support what Councillor Carter is saying there. Let's see how much money is left. I think the answer is 8.9 million. But unless this board get behind spending it, you know, will we say yes, deliver the schemes that will make the improvements? Yes, when Jacobs did their analysis, because I got right into data, it meant that it added 14 minutes to a 40-minute journey. That's a massive percentage increase. When you pushed them further and said, so is that severe? Because that's the definition in the planning rule book. If it's severe, which is on a par with gridlock, then you might have a planning reason to start refusing. They would never commit to severe. It was horrible, but the junction improvements were to mitigate that. So we now have the worst of the worst. We have the traffic and we haven't delivered the junction improvements. And this board, quite frankly, needs to get behind a positive series of solutions. I'll repeat myself if I.
Thank you, Councillor.
If I could, that are well designed.
So I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
That are well designed. The problem now is, of course, the money we were given probably 5-6 years ago, maybe more than that on the integrated transport money. The cost of building these highway schemes is probably now double what it was 6 years ago. And we've only got 8.9 million when it should now in real terms be double that.
I'm going to draw this to a close now, because I'm minded that we are coming to the integrated transport section. And I think, you know, this is going to be revisited, I'm sure, in parts that Councillor Clark, and then, to be fair, Councillor Cooling.
I heard what was said just now. Now, KCC developed a fully mitigating scheme at Sutton Road, Willington Street, Wallace Avenue, and KCC asked for it. KCC, as part of the planning process, said to the developers at Langley Park, if you're going to do that, you are going to cause harm on the network. This is what we want to reconfigure that junction. So KCC asked for it. It came to joint transport, and yes, it was. I wasn't one of the ones that voted it down, but basically a proposal was put forward to make a lesser scheme, which I did not support, and that proposal was successful. Now that lesser scheme came back to the board, and the officers said that they could not.
Is this on the work? Sorry,
could not say
we are on the work program.
It was worth it.
We're going to come to this one.
I'm just going to finish, because myself, at the end of this whole process, when KCC said they couldn't justify the cost for a lesser scheme, myself and Councillor Ian Chittenden re-proposed the original fully mitigating scheme that KCC had asked for originally, and we won the vote, and it went to KCC.
This is not culminating in an item or a change to an item. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Clark. Councillor Cooling
refused to.
We're going to talk about this all again later, I feel sure. So, Councillor Cooling.
Thank you. A different item 3, the future of this JTB. It strikes me this is a fairly fundamental question. I mean, is this a talk shop or not? So I would have thought this report needs something better than to be confirmed as a date. It should be done fairly urgently, and we should hear what the proposed role, objectives, and powers, if any, this board are. And if KCC does not produce a draft within a month, I suggest that NBC has a go at doing a draft on behalf of KCC. This must be settled rapidly, otherwise we're all wasting our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. Yeah, this was something that I actually asked to be put on the work programme, because obviously I was aware that KCC had held their own highways meeting, which was where it came up, the future of the JTB. And I think it is the most salient point, because, you know, residents are here, they want answers. I want them to have answers. And we're an advisory board. So how does that work together? It's not serving residents very well as it stands. And I think, you know, we want these, everyone across the board wants these road improvements, and we want to be able to answer the questions more fully. Having said that, this is supposed to be a board where KCC and NBC come together to discuss the items to do with the joint transportation of this borough that we all want. So my question is this the right forum, if only the effort were put into it to make it the right forum? And that's what I'm struggling with. But I agree, I've requested that item, it's on the work programme. We don't have a date for KCC, understandably, because this is some of the issues that Councillor Neil Baker at KCC will be grappling with himself. But I feel that you are correct, Councillor Cooling, that Maidstone side should take away and start to think about what we want the future of the Joint Transportation Board to look like, if the answer from KCC or the discussion route, because that would be the best route, is not forthcoming. But I will take Councillor Burton, and then I've got Councillor Garton.
I'll try and be really brief. I've sat in the chair that you're sitting in many times. I've chaired this. There is nothing wrong with the Joint Transportation Board. It's down to the will of us sat at these benches to make it work. Sometimes it's unpopular to say what needs to be done, and those residents don't want this and that, but it's our duty to take the balance of evidence and make the tough decisions. Our avoidance of that is where the boards have failed. I'll have some sympathy with KCC officers not attending, because they come along, give their advice, and we send them away with a hiding. Well, that's not good enough. Come back with another miracle next week. We have to actually take the tough decisions.
Councillor Garton.
I think we need to expedite this particular item, because I think this Joint Transportation Board is not fit for purpose. I unfortunately have to disagree with my colleague to my left here. Talking about the standing items, we're looking at items which have been on the agenda since before I became councillor, and that was 2016. 8 years ago. I think something more dramatic has to happen. And if officers, KCC officers, don't attend this meeting, then it goes to show that this meeting is a talking shop. And Maidstone Borough Council changed from a committee system to an executive system, and administration in Maidstone is much better. Maybe we should have a sort of replace particular board with some direct member and executive members and officers meeting between the two executives of the two local authorities with the relevant officers to push these issues forward, rather than having a talking shop in the evening.
I've got Councillor Carter.
Yeah, briefly. I mean, the future of JTBs is being discussed across all 12 districts at the moment. I think properly constructed, with officers in attendance and members respecting officers as well, but officers also accepting democracy and the will of the members. And they need to listen to the public's views and elected members' views. Officers advise, members decide.
Thank you. Quite right. Councillor Wilkinson.
As a new councillor, and this is my third time here at this meeting, I've never been asked to vote on anything or offer. Even there hasn't been any officers here to put anything forward about the transport system. So yeah, that it would be appreciative if we could have a vote on something at the next meeting, and let's get Maidstone moving.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, added to that, I think I've been on the board for about a year or a year and a half before I actually chaired the board, and I actually can't remember anything that came forward that was for deciding. A lot of it is for noting. So I think that's maybe where things need to change. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see Councillor Cooling at the end there.
If I may, I think the concept of a joint executive operation committee between the two authorities is very interesting. Otherwise, this report should actually have within it what are the sanctions and escalation processes for a failure to do what that future committee actually votes to do. Thank you.
And very last one, and it is, I'm drawing a line after this, Councillor Burton.
I'm sorry to disappoint. The executive meeting behind closed doors doesn't work either. You will recall Maidstone took the Highways Authority to the High Court to get action. We settled out of court, but one of the conditions was we set up precisely that, an executive board of members from KCC and MBC, and that didn't work either. It's far, far better we have this in public so that you can actually hear what we're saying and watch us carefully who does vote for and against when the chips are down.
Okay, no. Okay, so right, wrapping this all up, and we've got the 4 items that are on the current work programme, and I've added the item about a report on how much money of the select funds, what they've been spent on, and including the seal money, section 106. So that will come forward from both sides, obviously.
And what the shortfall will be in delivering these programmes.
Well, I assume that will come in that, because it's going to be a report on what's been spent and what's left to spend when you find out there's none left or whatever, you know, that will all be. So that is concluding item 11, and we are now moving on to item. Is that noted by everybody with that addition of that extra one? Yeah. Yeah. So we're now moving on to item 12, which is your Maidstone integrated transport package. We don't have any KCC officers here to introduce the report this evening. So it's the normal scheme updates, the normal headings, and then it's quite a full report this time on different updates. So just for people listening, we've got scheme updates on the A249 Bearsted Road major infrastructure project, the A20 Cold Harbour Road and the A20 London Road Hall Road. We've got the A229 Lewes Road corridor scheme, the A229 Lewes Road junction with the A274 Sutton Road Wheatsheaf junction scheme, the A229 Lewes Road junction with Armstrong Ray Parkway, the A229 Lewes Road junction with Shields Crescent, the A229 Lewes Road junction with Cripple Street, Borton Lane, the A20 Ashford Road junction with Willington Street, the A26 Road junction with Fountain Lane, and the A274 Sutton Road junction with Willington Street. I've got a visiting member, Councillor Cleater, if you want to come forward to speak on. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got 2 members of the public first that were going to speak on this item as well. So first of all, we have Andrew Hammersley, if you'd like to come forward and address the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening again. Right, sitting here watching this, I've had to change my statement a few times because I've got to say it's getting a little bit more animated in here. So I've got to say well done to some of you councillors for actually starting to speak your mind. When I came in August, it was so disappointing. It was so sycophantic. It was unbelievable. So well done for that. I'd also like to say thank you to Councillor Sams. I don't know if he's watching on YouTube. He is the one councillor who has responded to my several emails I've sent to the committee. I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Russell for your patience, and sorry for calling you Christine in my email last week. Thank you to Councillors Claytor and Wilkinson for their efforts in trying to get Cranbourne Avenue open, and I would really implore that our KCC councillor representative for the area could learn something from them, because he's been absent for a long time and I don't know what he does. Well, I do, because I've seen his Facebook profile. Anyway, this whole business is causing people a lot of stress. It's stress for the people behind me having to negotiate the Plains Avenue junction. It's stress having to meander through the North Shepherd estate, which is not designed to cope with the increased volume of traffic. It's stress for those residents living on Loose Road who are struggling to enter or exit their drives. It's stress for those of us who are trying to battle to be heard, and for KCC to realise that they have made one massive mistake. You only had to hear you reading out A229, A229, A229. Wake up. I shouldn't have to be sitting here if this committee was doing their job. This has come up tonight. Thank you for mentioning that, you councillors. When I tell people that a group of elected councillors meet like this, but they can't make decisions, instead that is left to one elected individual who is not even local to the area, who receives information from unelected people who don't even turn up to the meeting. And by the way, I believe they get paid, so they really ought to. They think I am talking a load of rubbish. It really is up to you councillors to rectify this shambles, the maladroit way that this has all been handled. You need to poke each other's arguments. You need to probe each other's arguments. You need to push hard against each other's arguments to sort this mess out. I come now to the data. I've sent you on the committee a report on the data, and also hopefully you've taken time to watch the YouTube video I made on that data. It is rubbish. You hide behind data and don't check it out. It's invalid, but I've still managed to turn it against you. I assume you all watch the weather forecast. You let that influence you each day in what you do or what you wear. That weather forecast is a model. It uses historical data to predict what's likely to happen. And I assume you trust that model. I have sent you a model of what is likely to happen over the coming years in terms of accidents between the wheat sheaf and the parkway lights. It's not difficult to work out. You can do it yourselves. The road now has 5 times more likely to have an accident today than when before Cranbourne Avenue was opened. That's an increase of 15 road traffic accidents that are going to happen this year. I'm not surprised it's going to happen. I spent a little bit of time walking along that road last night. It was rush hour. The horns were beeping. There were angry jesters as people were trying to cut in on that road. Given statistically that 1% of road traffic accidents in the UK result in a death, I decided to model this. So yesterday I modeled it and I discovered that we can expect a fatality on that road within the next 5 years. Now, of course, that is a statistical estimation and can vary due to random chance and other factors. But the same data plugged in when Cranbourne Avenue was open, it stretches to 8 years. So you have increased the risk of a fatality by 63%. Okay, 63% you've increased that risk. Brainless. Somebody sent me today the constitution for the council, the principles of decision making. I was quite amused by it. Number 1, reasonableness. In other words, decision is not manifestly unreasonable. Ask the residents behind me if they agree with that. Due consultation. You couldn't even answer my question tonight about when Neil Baker consulted the residents. That hasn't been ticked. Taking professional advice from officers. Well, the officers get paid. That ticks the professional bit, but I don't think they're very good at their job. Explain the reasons. I'm almost there. Explain the reasons for decisions and the options considered. No, doesn't happen. Respect for human rights and procedural fairness. I'm not sure how that comes in. A presumption of favour of openness. No. Clarity of aims and desired outcomes. Not at all. And something called the public sector equality duty, which I had to look up and talks about eliminating harassment and victimisation. I'm telling you, the residents around that Cranbourne Avenue area are feeling victimised because we are not getting heard. We're not getting listened to. The evidence is there. Cranbourne Avenue needs to be opened, and it needs to be opened now. And you guys need to make that happen. I've finished.
Thank you, Mr. Hammersley. We've got Michelle James now, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you. When you're ready, we'll start the 3 minutes.
Thank you for taking the time. Since the closure of Cranbourne Avenue, new traffic lights at...
Oh, sorry, go again, go again.
Since the closure of Cranbourne Avenue, new traffic lights at Armstrong Road were implemented in January 2023, there have been more accidents on the Lewes Road than ever. My investigation has led to 8 accidents being reported between the Wheatsheaf Junction and Armstrong Road, both ways, dated from the 16th of January 2023 to the 7th of January 2024. These have been collated through social media, Kent Online and photo evidence, and has been well documented. The letter from the KCC that was issued on the 20th of September 23 had stated, the review of personal injury crashes on Plains Avenue has shown that there's been 0 crashes recorded in the last 5 years, noting the recent crash that occurred in August 23, which was contradictory, was reported as damage only. I'm sure you've seen the accidents published in the Kent Messenger, and most recently the one on January 24 at Plains Avenue, where they were taken to a hospital. And to be honest with you, not all injury is reported straight away. The new problem that now has occurred is that the traffic is now bottlenecking the Lewes Road northbound, as this has been reduced to 1 lane going into Maidstone. This morning at 6:30, I took a video recording and sent it to you all at the committee and Neil Baker, which was suggested, to show you what I deal with every day, day in, day out. The past report from the KCC suggests that up to 1,000 cars every 15 minutes use the Lewes Road, but these reports were done in 2022. As you are aware, more houses have been built in our area, which vast majority of vehicles that are travelling and having to merge or cut in to be from the Wheatsheaf Junction to the Plain Avenue, the brave ones, as there's no longer 2 lanes into Maidstone. With buses, HGVs and emergency services using the Lewes Road, I urge the committee that this is now a matter of urgency before a death occurs. It's just a matter of time. I have to use my drive like everybody else on the Lewes Road and Northview, and the main reason Cranbourne Avenue was closed was to be demolished. The Wheatsheaf was to improve the junction, and this has not been done, and it's more now becoming very unlikely this is going to happen, as there is talk of even turning the Wheatsheaf into an HMO. I would like to know why all the funding is being held when it has been given to improve the area. Since the closure of Cranbourne Avenue, there is no safe route to access our drives, and we have to deal with the congested traffic. There are 40 houses on the Lewes Road, 13 in Northview, and 9 houses using Northview at the back of the shops that risk their lives every day due to the heavy traffic that has been from KCC. And we have to wait to get on our drive, which can take two traffic light sequences. So I'm holding up traffic southbound. Cranbourne Avenue needs to be reopened, as this road was a supply and demand traffic light and was far safer and allowed a breather in the traffic flow. And for us on the Lewes Road northbound and Northview to safely access our drives. This will be a cheaper option for the KCC to use the funds for more planning that's taken years already. Because let's face it, Keep Maidstone Moving was published in 2016 and nothing has been done to improve the Wheatsheaf Junction. KCC aren't listening to the people who voted them in. Thank you, committee, for listening to me, and remember, the Lewes Road does not affect the few, it affects the many, regardless whether you're a homeowner or trying to get to work or even a young person getting to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What can I say? Another report for noting. And for me, common courtesy is if you're going to present a report to a committee, you turn up and present that report or have someone substitute for you, whether you're an officer or an elected member. And this is yet again another joint transportation advisory board where we have no one from KCC to quite honestly present some of the most fraught proposals ever. So how can you sit here and note a report that basically says nothing? It's a nothing thing. It's a bit inaccurate as well. When it says about the next phase of the project's being finalised and Cranbourne Avenue replacing this will be in phase 1, but nobody ever talks or goes and looks at what the residents are going through. There's no, how can I put it? We all accept we've got to make difficult decisions in life, but the bottom line is, the end of the day, it's people who elect us, and we need to look when we make decisions, although this is an advisory board, which is my understanding, we can't make decisions, we can make recommendations or note reports. Then if this isn't working, we need to come up with something that's fit for purpose that does. But we're at a moment now within our relationship with KCC, not with elected members who, whether you agree or not, consistently turn up to these boards and do their role. We have our officers that turn up, and we have one officer who religiously turns up from KCC, and fair play to her because she does it every time. But that to me tells me that other officers from KCC can turn up, should turn up and speak about what they're actually doing, because actually the way this is being done, it breeds not just resentment, but it breeds a distrust in what KCC is saying. It breeds anger in people, and anyone who drives around Shepway, and I have to for my day job, knows that the place is full of potholes now because of the more traffic. We've got heavier traffic. We've got teachers emailing me saying, yet again, I'm having to replace tyres because of the state of the roads on the estate. Well, if we're sending all this traffic alternate, then exactly what colleagues are saying, it should be repaired and replaced to be able to take the traffic that's being sent there. But we've got angry residents because they don't feel listened to. And this seems to be a pattern at the moment that we're getting. Personally, if you can't be bothered to come and place your report and just present it, even if it was to formally present it, why should we note it? That's my view on this. I just think the whole thing's a mess. At the whole point of KCC, you've got to be open to challenge. You've got to be transparent. You've got to be able to be questioned. Now, we may not agree with the answers. We may not. But the bottom line is you should be here to present your reports. That's the bottom line. And whether you have a difficult conversation or not, that's our business. Yes, we expect people to behave respectfully. Yes, we expect people to complain. My advice to the residents here is, if you're not happy with what KCC is doing and how you're being treated, lodge a complaint and then take it to the Ombudsman. That's the route to go through if you think KCC isn't providing a service. A bit long-winded, but it does have effect. There is a process to go to. But at the end of the day, there's elections next year at KCC, so people will have their voice then. But clearly, we need to have something that's better than this, because this is just a list that basically says not very much. You know, what's the information behind that? It's not saying much. It's just a list. It's like me saying, I bought me eggs, I got me bread, I've done this. It's just a list. We have no know-how background as to how they've reached these conclusions. And my other issue is on accident data. Accident data walked away from a crash, so they don't really log that as an injury. I had a colleague who walked away from a crash, managed to get to the hospital, and then 2 days later they found out he had a fractured spine. So just because you can walk away from a car crash doesn't mean there's not significance. You need that deep dive into the information. Personally, I'm not on this committee, but I wouldn't notice it, because if you can't be bothered to present it, why should we notice it?
Okay, I've got in this order, Councillor Button, then Councillor Clark, Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Cooling, and Councillor Wilkinson. So if we kick off then with Councillor Burton.
I better start with the apology because I'm going to make myself incredibly unpopular now. But let's take this as the live example of the problem this board faces, the problem it doesn't face up to. Cranbourne Avenue, Mr. Hammersley, I promise you, I looked into all the detail about that, right deeply into it. It saves 17 seconds of traffic flow time by not being there. I'm sure it doesn't matter which direction it's going in, that's 17 seconds of 17 seconds is a massive amount of traffic flow. And, you know, what this board has to do is balance the very intense pressure from those affected by that with the responsibility of planning the highways flow for the other 175,000 residents of Maidstone. And these are really, really difficult decisions. Why is there more traffic? It's because there's more housing. Why is there more housing? The biggest underlying factor is we're all living a lot longer. That's the biggest factor. No, it's not money. It's actually population growth. Where will we all live? That's what drives it. You know, you won't have any less cars if you have less houses because you have the same number of people. So this board has really difficult decisions in front of it, and we swerve them. But the decisions have to be made, otherwise the money won't be spent and no improvements will ever happen. And what we're actually faced with tonight is pressure to reverse the one thing that has been done. I apologise for saying the unpopular thing, but it is the truth. It is the truth.
Sorry, we're not in the public bit of the meeting. I'm sorry. No, I think it's, no, I'm sorry. We're not in the public bit of the meeting. So I'm going to move to Councillor Clark, please.
Chairman, we had the same situation in the summer. We had a crowded gallery. We had KCC officers that didn't turn up. We had a consultation out for Cranbourne Avenue closure. When we asked officers to turn up for the next meeting, which was an important meeting because it was the end of that consultation, and as members, it's been mentioned that we can discuss and we can work out a balance. We were looking to analyse what happened from that consultation, but we never got to see that because we went to a meeting where no cases was present, and just as we're going to the next meeting, which you yourself had said you'll make sure that the officers are there, you found it was quite a shameful thing that it was like that. We all get ready for that meeting, and just as we're going in there to analyse the data from the consultation, we find that in cooperation with the KCC councillor, the Highways Cabinet member has made the decision ahead of the meeting. So we never got to discuss, we never got to look at what happened with this closure. When we finally got there, when we finally got to the next meeting, but the deal had already been done at that point, the decision made, we found out that 96 people had responded to that consultation, and of those 96 people, 73 objected. but we could do absolutely nothing about it because the decision was made at that point. It's no wonder that people are upset in the public gallery, because it's not just today. This has happened a protracted period of time. How can you feel that your voice is being heard if 96 people respond, 73 say they object? Yes, you can talk about the seconds and how it benefits others, but they didn't respond. They chose not to respond. It was 73 out of 96 that did not want this to happen. So clearly there are going to be consequences when that does happen. Now, there's a wider problem. We've talked about housing and the impact on transport, the impact on the A229, which is absolutely horrific. I use it all the time. I live south of Maidstone, so I have to suffer with all of these people. But right now, we've got the local plan update. The inspector has come back to say that there's documentation that needs to go to further consultation. One of those documents is the infrastructure delivery plan. Now, if the inspector was to look at that infrastructure delivery plan, he would look at major ambitious plans at the Wheatsheaf. £1 million at Cripple Street, Boughton Lane. But the reality is that they're never going to happen, because we know that KCC is promoting a do minimum plan at the Wheatsheaf Junction. They're saying that the biggest benefit has already been delivered with the closure of Cranbourne Avenue. So at this point, they're promoting, because we heard it in this board, a do minimum plan. Now, when the government inspector looks at that document and sees all these ambitious plans, he may be inclined to say, oh, well, look at this. I don't see a great problem with this extra housing when I've got all of this mitigation. But it's not a true picture, and it will come back and bite us. Not necessarily in this board, because it might have been dissolved by then, but it will bite all of us that have to suffer on the A229 corridor.
I have got Councillor Jeffrey next.
Thank you, Chair. I've made loads of notes during this. So I've got 3 broad points. I will try to keep them as summary as possible. Clearly, there is huge frustration at the governance of this committee. It's obviously not a decision-making committee. It's also one that can't hold KCC to account. And we've heard the dissent and resentment and the concerns from the public, and I think that is well heard. I think there is one positive point about this committee, is that it is held and public are allowed to speak. I believe county council meetings public aren't allowed to speak at, and interact in the same way. So I think there is. I've asked to speak and I haven't managed to get in there yet. So I think there is some benefit in the local aspects to this. However, it does need a really serious rethink. My second point is around the plan itself. I have watched the video that was taken at 6:30 this morning. A lot of traffic. It is bad up the Loose Road, Sutton Road. I don't live over that part of town. I live, as people know, on the other side of town, and I cycle around a lot. We have probably not quite as bad, but we have similar problems. I get around by cycling. The one place I don't cycle in Maidstone is up the Loose Road, because I think it's way too dangerous. And I think that brings me to my key point, and I've said it a few times. I think this is my 3rd time at subbing here over the years. This plan says integrated. It's not integrated. It's a road. It's fixes for a road system that is crumbling, that is dying. It just doesn't work for people. There's nothing about cycling, walking, buses in the plan at all. And frankly, I think it's appallingly named. And finally, just in terms of some of the specifics, we've heard a lot about Loose Road, and I've got no idea. I've looked at how you might come out of Plains Avenue, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, it was scary. I've been driving for over about 40 years, I think, and I wouldn't want to come out of there. So I do have huge sympathy. I just want to bring up Cold Harbour Roundabout, though, because there is an issue there. It's all heading to go ahead. We're losing all the trees from there. We've got flooding there. People are really concerned that it's going to be another catastrophe of transport around West Maidstone. We've had last summer roadworks throughout West Maidstone that then got curtailed for some reason by City Fibre. And specifically, I spoke to somebody who tried to do a walk from the new Poppies development, not in NBC's area, it's in Tunbridge, into to the Mid-Kent shopping centre. There's a flood. You've got to cross the A20. There's no proper crossing. It's really, really dangerous. So, you know, once again, we have got this complete lack of proper integrated transport plan, one that we desperately need, and one that desperately needs to be built from the people upwards. So I'm going to propose that, based on Councillor Cleater's point, that we don't note this report to see if that has an effect.
I have got some other councillors to speak, but I'll just check if you've got a seconder for that for Councillor Clark. Okay, so I'll come back to the voting on that in a minute. But next I have Councillor Cooling.
Thank you very much. It's my second meeting of this committee. Rather interesting. I've heard Councillor Burton say a couple of times that there's a decision logjam, and we have to face the fact that Maidstone isn't the only major conurbation with traffic problems. The housing numbers are almost mandated by government, and the media is full of statements about more housing needed, etc., etc., etc. One could wonder why we need so many houses. Let's not get into that. But the local plan of October 2017 did have a number of mitigation measures stipulated, and if they're being stymied because of a lack of willpower to take decisions, as perhaps alluded to by Councillor Burton, then this decision mechanism must form a vital part of the review of how this committee operates. Our current the road system is here. We can't start with a blank sheet of paper. Therefore, it is, you could say, playing around at the edges, but it needs decisions to be able to play around at the edges. And I must say, this paper, I think it would help if it had a table, perhaps right at the start, that gave a context by listing all these, I haven't counted them, these major projects, and alongside them, the notional total cost. Because of course, all of us as council taxpayers, and a lot of it goes through to KCC, we have to be cognizant of the fact that KCC has, well, like everyone, like the individual, like my parish, like the borough, KCC has horrendous budgetary problems. And some of the problems will not go away because they involve education, social care, and so on. So I'm guessing that KCC is doing what I would do if we're still in business. I would look for areas where the pain would still be there, but if we're not under some statutory obligation to actually spend, look after education and so on, then I would have to shave this because I haven't got enough money in the kitty. So I do think this paper, the next version of this paper, should have a monetary context to it so that all of us who read it, and we do this in our parish, we look at the budget, etc., etc. Everyone who reads it understands, oh, this isn't 5 bobs worth. I'm guessing this is the other side of 100 million. I do not know. But let us have a context, and then maybe we'd understand why KCC is not coming to decision. But the role of this committee then is to prioritise decisions and make sure somehow they get enacted. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On Friday, I actually phoned up KCC Highways to make a complaint and find out why the officers are not here, but I haven't received a reply yet. And here we are once again without any support or answers from the KCC officers who are meant to be here tonight. The very KCC officers who have ignored safety concerns from residents regarding the closure of Cranbourne Avenue. I feel like it's a bit like Groundhog Day again. Maybe the officers were unable to provide a reasonable explanation for the many discrepancies found in the methodology of the data collection, as explained by resident Mr. Hammersley earlier on. Data which has been used to arrive at the justification for the road closure and has been found wanting. Since 17 seconds of traffic flow, saving 17 seconds of traffic flow on the loose road, but it will add 17 seconds elsewhere. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. And is it worth the increase in traffic and accidents along there? KCC officers have also expressed that the now weekly accidents occurring on the Plains Avenue junction are nothing to do with the road closure. However, they have not provided an alternative explanation for them, nor the data to back it up. As evidenced tonight, this issue isn't just isolated to a few residents who live in Marion Crescent. There are also many concerned residents who live along the loose road who are also here to express their concerns. Furthermore, there are no updates regarding the next phase of the Wheatsheaf junction improvements. After all, isn't this the reason why Cranbourne Avenue was closed in the first place? As my colleague, Councillor Cleaton, mentioned, I think it's now time for residents to take this complaint further to the local government ombudsman, as this is the only way I feel that they will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I've got Councillor Burton next.
I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but there is a motion, I think, to not note this report.
There is.
Now, I don't think I can provide an amendment that defeats the motion. So hopefully, when you've defeated the motion, oh, I can. Right. All right. So I don't think we should refuse to note it because, well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? We've discussed it for the last hour. But what I think we do is that we note the report and hold KCC to account before the public for their failure and address that directly to the Cabinet. Yeah, it's just words, but to pretend the report isn't there and we're not noting it is we need to publicly state we hold KCC to account for their failure.
Just checking that. So you want to note the report and hold KCC to account for their failing?
Hold KCC to account before the public for their failure.
Sorry, I'm just going to check if he's got a seconder for that, Councillor Green. I've got to vote on your motion as a motion first, which I'm about to do. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to provide a little bit of clarity, I've had a look at the committee procedure rules, and underneath the amendment rule, it says that any motion may be subject to reasonable amendment with the agreement of the committee and or the members proposing and seconding the motion. So if the committee was in agreement with an amendment, it could be amended. There's no specific, as previously, there's no, thank you, that's the word. There's no specific rule preventing that from happening, even if it does negate the original motion now. That's no longer included in the current constitution.
Right. I had Councillor Passmore who also asked to speak, so I'm going to do that first. Oh, and Councillor Carter? I'm going to do those two. You're going to speak on the amendment. Okay, so Councillor Passmore, before we move.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to, first of all, support
Councillor Jeffrey's position, I find the report actually frustrating that it is supposed to be an integrated transport report. It is totally focused on purely cars and motor transport. There are other means of transport which we clearly need to be addressing at the same time in this report, and the report is sadly missing on that area. I also support the position by Councillor Cooling that we actually know the cost of these improvements. As he pointed out, this Kent County Council is under huge financial pressure. At a briefing this morning, we were told that £100 million worth of investment is not done in our roads each year. That's 100 million each year. That's £1 billion over 10 years. We have to appreciate Kent County Council does not have a lot of money. It is under huge pressure, and we have to be realistic about what can be afforded, unless we all want to pay a lot more council tax or have cuts elsewhere.
Okay, so now I'm going to move it back to the amendment, which is that we should note the report, the board should note the report and hold KCC to account to the public for their failing. That was the amendment to the original motion. So do I have anyone to speak on the amendment? I think I have Councillor Carter first, and then Councillor Garton, and then Councillor Jeffrey and Clark. Okay, start with you, Councillor Carter.
I mean, we sort of debated this earlier on this evening. We asked for a detailed programme of how this work is going to be delivered and costed and timelines when they're likely to start, and honesty on the total cost of delivering the overall plan, and there will be a need for prioritisation. I think the biggest problem Maidstone's had, we've had too much housing without the infrastructure investment, and Maidstone's taken a greater percentage of housing than probably any other district or planning authority in the country outside of the big cities. And frankly, it's time we stood up to government and said, look, there are plenty of plans for New Townsend, Folkestone and Hythe, and new developments in Thanet, new developments at potential for growing Kings Hill, even larger and bigger. There are plenty of extensible places to build more housing where the infrastructure is already there, such as the Leybourne bypass, the high-speed 2 train at Otterpool, and all of that coming. And Ashford that wants to have a lot more housing. It's got plenty of available flat land, well connected to the motorway with high-speed 1 trains to London. That is where the housing should be concentrated, and it's long overdue that Maidstone stands up and say enough is enough. And I think any future housing minister would be very receptive to the case that Maidstone, I travel up and down the country regularly, all over the place, and when you come back to the M20 coming into Maidstone, it's gridlocked in the evening, and the traffic jam trying to get to the South Maidstone is absolutely horrific and getting worse by the day. As more and more houses are built without the infrastructure to support it. So, I think we cannot go on doing what we're doing, and that's why it'll be so interesting if the highways officers say, well, actually, we can't afford most of this lot. So even more case in the local plan to stand up to any future housing minister and say, we've tried, minister, we've built far more houses than anybody else in England. We can't do any more unless you're going to get a big checkbook and put in the infrastructure of all different modes of transport, make sure people can get from A to B in reasonable travel times. And it's getting worse, even though still a large percentage of people still working from home. The congestion does get worse, particularly when school term times are around.
I've got Councillor Garton now to speak on the amendment.
Not on the amendment, but I'd like to speak on what Councillor Carter just
Speaking
said.
to the amendment now, Councillor Garton.
Yeah, the amendment, I think the amendment is a tricky one. How can we hold KCC to account if we still note their report? This report is not a report, it's an update. It's a list of projects in waiting. And there's where Councillor Carter just said, we're building too many houses. Yes, but we have the money. And that's why we are sitting on £8.9 million for the last 8-9 years
to improve these roads, and nothing is happening because the dialogue between the two local authorities just isn't in existence. And that's what I said earlier on. We need to push the review of this board forward. That's my main point. We need to have clear decisions. I mean, this evening across the party spectrum, we were talking about, some members said, oh, well, we have to have a look at the trees. Another member said, does KCC have a do minimum plan? Well, even if KCC has a do minimum plan, there is money in the kitty. And we need the officers in this room or in a meeting which replaces this type of meeting, which hopefully would be more effective, to ask these questions to officers and to make a decision. For the last 18 months, this debating chamber has not made any decision. We need a committee or some sort of body between the two authorities which can make decisions, that we don't just get reports and we are debating here whether we should note them or not note them. I think probably not noting them would probably set the strongest signal, but it still doesn't hold the authority to account.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Jeffrey to speak to the amendment.
Yeah, I'll keep this quick. I like what Councillor Garton just said about sending a stronger signal. I think not noting this does make a more public statement. Councillor Burton, we have tried, I seem to recall, noting and making representations, and we're still here. So I think sending a stronger signal is the right thing to do. And I must say, Councillor Carter, you know, standing up to government, you are part of the party of government. So, you know, I do wonder why you cannot get right in there and make more of a point at a higher level. So yes, let's please vote Councillor Burton's amendment down, and let's not note the report. Thank you.
So the last person
Chairman, on the point of information, can I just make my point was we need more housing in this country, but we need to be where we select to build those houses needs to be sensible, practical and pragmatic. We need more housing. There are plenty of good places to build new towns, new villages across the countryside of this country, and not superimpose more on places like Maidstone that haven't got the infrastructure to support it. That's my point.
Thank you. Councillor Carter clarified his point, and now we're moving on to Councillor Clark, who's the last person to speak to the amendment.
So I won't be supporting the amendment because I feel that Maidstone owns its local plan. That local plan comes with delivery of mitigation. So it's not just a case of pushing it over to KCC. KCC may be delivering these roads, but Maidstone has to own its local plan, which includes the transport element. And as far as I mentioned earlier, we've got a infrastructure delivery plan that's gone out to consultation so the public can express their views on it, and it says that the delivery at the wheat sheaf will start in 2021 and will be completed within 12 months. A number of other schemes have been listed starting in 2021, delivered 12 months later. I just wonder, it's almost like this report, it's almost someone just couldn't be bothered to go in there and say, actually, before we put this consultation, let's do an update. Let's say what's happening, because leaving dates of 2021 for projects that aren't going to be delivered because we've discussed them subsequently, it is embarrassing. And I do think it makes a strong point for us to not note this, because you know we're all spending a lot of time here. There's a lot of people reviewing this. I think that our debate has happened in spite of this report. I don't think we've taken this report and we've said, okay, let's go through it, and we want to bring this up, we want to bring that up, because this report is pretty much a cut and paste for the last 2, 3, 4 JTBs. Now, I do want to just mention how mean it is, the fact that last time I did raise the fact that nobody can turn right from Parkway, and it causes these people a lot of problems. Now, why wasn't the officer said they would consider it and go back, because the original plan not to turn right from Parkway into town was because you had the option at Cranbourne Avenue, but now you've closed Cranbourne Avenue. You've created a problem for people that side of the Lewes Road, and I've raised it to say, can we reconsider it, because it will make a big difference to these people. And it's not even in this report. We asked about the yellow box junction at Parkway and Armstrong Road, where cars are coming into conflict with the pedestrians that cross. The officer said that he would go back and have a look. Alex Beach from KCC said it was required when he looked into it and saw the video evidence. Why isn't that in there? I just see the same cut and paste report, and I think it's worth expressing our frustration.
Okay, I'm going to allow, because she doesn't normally, no, we're done. Okay, that's one quicker. So we've got the wording for the amendment, which is to note the report and hold KCC to account to the public for their failing. So I'm taking votes on that amendment first of all. So votes in favour? Votes against? Sorry. For the against. So hands up high for the against, sorry. Good. And abstentions? So that amendment falls. So that brings us back to the substantive motion, was that we should refuse to note the report. So taking votes in favour of that. Against? And abstentions? Okay, that is carried. The board has refused to note the report on agenda item 12. Now, if you remember earlier, because I'm just going to close this off, and then if we've got a few more items to cover, and then we will have a comfort break after this, but I'm really conscious that we have an officer from KCC hanging on the line. So we're going to switch now to item 16, which is your Maidstone Highways Works Programme update, the Highways Forwards Works Programme, and that is on starts page 38 of your papers this evening. And Sue is very kindly remained on the line if the board have any questions that they'd like to ask her. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, Councillor Hasty?
Can I just thank Sue for sitting there and waiting and actually coming? That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sue. Yeah, your attendance, as always, is really much appreciated. So this report is for noting, and does the board agree to note this report? Noted. Thanks very much, Sue. You can go now. So I'm just going to take a 5-minute comfort break. So we'll come back. Well, it's going to be actually a bit longer than that. We'll come back at 8:20. Thank you. Okay, I'll make it 20 past, so we're going to start up again. If Councillor Garton would get back to the Maidstone side. So the next thing that we've got on the agenda is the Maidstone Local Bus Focus Group, which is item 13. And that's a Maidstone report. So we've got our Maidstone officer, Tom Gilbert, Principal Planner for Strategic Planning, to introduce the report for us this evening. Thank you. Over to you, Tom. Thank you very much. We have our visiting member who wants to speak on this item. So Councillor Cleater.
Need to go on a diet there, never mind. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a brief clarification, because we did discuss this and a very substantial document at Pied. The one thing that is positive about this is we have control in setting the agenda and who to invite. So whilst I know the options one and what it says, is that I really do think, as well as ensuring we have the bus companies there, we need to ensure at some point we get some public feedback around and participation in taking this forward, because I think we discussed this at Pied, and I think there is a way we can do that. It's not in these documents, but it clearly states in the documents presented to Pied that we are in control of the agenda and we can invite who we want to come to those meetings. But I just wanted to raise that here, because I think as laid out, that might not be apparent, but we should get the widest opportunity, whether it's people from rural areas, whether it's people from in the town, about what we want to do for the future of a bus service and how we work together. We've just had a long debate about the roads. The bottom line is, if we get a decent public transport system, that would ease the problems greatly. And I am very, very aware that the ward that myself and Councillor Wilkinson represent actually probably have a better bus service than most in Maidstone. But I think this is a Maidstone-wide thing, so I welcome the opportunity, basically, for us to have some control over setting the agenda and about doing the work jointly on what we would like to see for both our rural communities, but our urban communities as well, but not have a reaver pushing the agenda, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so I'll open the debate to the board, and I've got so far in this order Councillor Cooper, Councillor Burton, followed by Councillor Jeffrey. So anyone else indicate, and we'll kick off with Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. As was explained during the presentation of the report, I will be the final decision maker on this report, and it has previously gone to the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee at Maidstone a couple of weeks ago in this room. I've put off making the decision specifically until after tonight's meeting of the Joint Transportation Board, because I think one of the aspects that was discussed at PIDE and that I'm particularly keen on is that the enhanced partnership, so the first sort of the most local circle, as it were, should report back to this board on a regular basis. So it's quite a large structure. There are several concentric circles. It's a little bit like the 9 cycles of hell from Dante's Inferno, I suspect. We have control over the first one. I think it is very important that there is a representation, elected representation from Maidstone Borough Council, and it was agreed at the PAC that the relevant cabinet member should attend. It was also suggested that the membership, whilst we don't want to have a huge room where we invoke arguments and get nowhere, but that there is the opportunity to invite interested groups when there are particular topics on the agenda, and that is something that I fully agree with. We were talking about the South Maidstone Action Group on Road and Transport Smart, and there are others. That's something that I can get behind. The other thing which I think is important to note, there is a huge amount of scepticism about what difference this will make. I certainly share that scepticism, and I look around the room and I see nods. I think, frankly, this new structure isn't going to solve every problem, but it is at least a starting point. The Quality Bus Partnership was disbanded about 2 years ago, and there has been a vacuum in that regard. So it is positive. We're moving forwards, and I really hope that we do get something out of it. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Tom Gilbert, who for the last 2 years has been chasing Kent County Council to try to get a structure that will work. Every time I come to a meeting, Councillor Jeffrey says, well, there's no Quality Bus Partnership, what are you doing about it? And the awkward answer is, well, actually, Kent County Council haven't come up with anything. They have come up with something now. We have been able to tweak the enhanced partnership a little bit. And I think if we can go into it with the spirit of making things better and improving them, we can't be in a worse position than we're currently in. And I think it is important to note, and unless there is huge disagreement, part of the decision that I wanted to make was that we would have a report back to Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development about the effectiveness, the perceived effectiveness of the board after a handful of the cycle of the meetings to see whether things have been fed back. I don't think there's an awful lot more we can do now to improve it, frankly, but I do think it's something that we need to continually monitor and make sure that we do get the best out of our ongoing dialogue with Kent County Council and bus operators and indeed bus user groups and interested parties.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Burton.
Thank you. I sat on more Quality Bus Partnership meetings than I care to even remember. And based upon that, I'm going to say 2 things, slightly at odds to perhaps what Councillor Mrs. Cleater was asking for. Firstly, you've got to view these forums, these engagements as strategic. The moment it degenerates into a user representation that's saying, oh, Mrs. Smith stood at the bus stop for the number 10 and it never arrived, you just disappear into a black hole. You've got to view this as a strategic engagement with the bus companies. And my experience is they're very open and they're very willing to engage at that level. And they will share a lot of confidential information, you know, financial and what the challenges are and passenger numbers. And that has to inform the strategic thinking that comes out of it. I think there is a place for transport user groups, you know, and sometimes that maybe needs to be a totally different forum, because if you load this with that, you'll get nowhere. That's my advice to you. I fully support setting up as per the papers, but just remember it's strategic. You've got to get under the skin of the business model that bus companies have to work with. and why it's not working, and why they will tell you that bus user declines by 3% year on year on year. And unless we can come up with the major billions of money to invest in buses across the nation, I've yet to see how that will change, but it's strategic. Keep it at that level when you engage.
Thank you, Councillor Batten. I've got Councillor Jeffrey next.
Thank you. I obviously do welcome the report. A couple of points on it though. Point 2.22 talks about reports being provided to the JTB where relevant. I do wonder if it needs to be a little stronger than that. Should that focus group report every time to this group with what it's done? That would feel a bit stronger. Under 2.20, there is a suggestion of making an alternative transport group, a sustainable transport group of some description. I would rather this be that group and bring all of those elements together, because obviously we talk about cars quite a lot. To have buses talked about here, or reports from a bus subgroup to be talked about here, and I would like to see cycling and walking groups also reporting in, so that we can be strategic about all of those ways of getting around. That would feel like the creation of, or the evolution of this group into something that's much more integrated and sustainable. So I don't think we need an alternative or a subgroup for it. I think this should be it in terms of those joint bits. I like the fact that MBC should be in charge. I suppose there's a question around how in public this group should be, and I'm guessing it probably won't be. I'd rather it was, but obviously that then has some downsides to it, particularly when we're dealing with commercial companies. I get that. But I do think also that participation from other groups in that meeting from time to time, it would be essential. So broadly speaking, I welcome this.
Thank you. Just picking up on a couple of points there from the chair. On page 20, the infographic table there, it does show where there's another thing called the EP Schemes Passenger Charter Group, which is one for each scheme area. So that is the place where it involves the passenger focused bus users and public. That's within that section, and you've got the frequencies at the bottom. Just picking up on a point from our officer, which is that KCC controls the funding for this, so we need to go through this structure in order to access the funding for the different groups. But I think in that infographic does set out where the public input lies. Yeah, so I think, is there anyone else that wants to speak on the item? Councillor Cooley.
Thank you. I note on page 22 in para 2.21 that when it's commenting on the network and punctuality improvement partnerships, that there would seem to be a possible amalgamation of issues, and the main thing stated at the top of 22 is about representation on that. And then if I may put you back to page 20 and the table at the top, I note that if this new group is put in place, there'll be 4 groups. And I do note that there are only 4 districts within our enhanced partnership scheme. Given what was said about the potential overlap, and given what was said about the possibility that the need for amending the membership, wouldn't it be better to keep the structure somewhat simpler and actually enhance the network and punctuality improvement partnership, recognizing there are only 4 districts, Maidstone plus 3 others, and amend its membership to include a few members, whatever that means, rather than invent yet another group which may or may not spend a lot of time, even if there are no users present. I certainly do believe if it were opened up to user input, it would become a talking shop, a very contentious talking shop. So rather than the option which is suggested of this new enhanced partnership local focus group with NBC leading it, why I would suggest that one of the other options, building up this network and punctuality improvement partnership, would end up in not increasing bureaucratic committees that may or may not actually do anything. Thank you.
Thank you. That was extremely detailed, so I'm going to hand over to Tom to just go through that in a bit more knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Cooling, do you want to come back?
Are we not prepared occasionally to stand up for what we think is sensible, even if that means challenging a paper you've already put to government? Why not challenge what structure you actually want for simplicity and not just adhere to what has been said before? Thank you.
So our available options are on page 22. The preferred option is option 1 on the papers, which is the creation of the local bus focus group as per the papers. Okay. That's just been slightly changed, that this advisory committee recommends the creation of a local bus focus group to allow for interaction and work on strategic issues. For example, bus infrastructure improvements and wider strategy policy updates with bus operators, and that we are recommending that to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development at Maidstone Borough Council. I am happy to propose that from the Chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burton, would you like to speak?
Reserve my right, but I think Councillor Cooling's probably quite anxious to speak.
Oh, Councillor Cooling, sorry.
I'm allowed. I understand I'm allowed to vote, but I don't know whether I'm allowed to propose something. But I would suggest that instead this committee goes for option 3 and then stands up and be counted in terms of challenging the existing formalized structures to actually make them more appropriate for needs. So option 3, formalize current structures amended, would be my proposal. Thank you.
So there's an amendment been put forward. Does Councillor Cooling have a seconder for that amendment? Would you like to speak? Okay, so we are now taking a vote on the on Councillor Cooling's amendment. The amendment wording is
as a point of order. Is that actually an amendment? I mean, it just says forget the proposal, come up with a different one.
Well, it's amended that he doesn't want to go for option 1. He would rather go for option 3.
You proposed option 1.
I proposed option 1,
Okay.
seconded by Councillor Burton.
But that's not amending your proposal.
He has amended my proposal to instead go for option 3, which is his own option.
Okay.
If
that's how.
The Borough Council does not set up a new group, but relies on existing formalised structures, such as KCC's, PIPs and EP schemes monitoring group. So that has been moved and seconded. Can I have votes in favour of option 3, the amendment? Well, yeah, Councillor Cooling's amendment. That's 2, 4. Votes against? Thank you. That falls. So back to the original, which I proposed, which was to go with option 1, The Borough Council, through the Head of Spatial Planning and Economic Development, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development, creates a new local bus focus group for the borough. Votes in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Option 1 is carried. That takes us on to item, oh, thank you, Councillor Hastie. That takes us on to item 14 of this evening's agenda, which is an item from Kent County Council this time. It's the Kent Bus Service Improvement Plan and the National Bus Strategy Funding Update. We don't have anyone to introduce this item, but we do have a visiting member that wanted to speak on this item. So Councillor Cleater, over to you.
Do you know what? To save everyone's time, I'll leave it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Does anyone want to open the debate on this item? Councillor Cooling.
On a detail on page 26, paragraph 1.6. The first indent, the first bullet is you can actually net support for revenue spend. The next bullet is a requirement that funding could not be used to sustain existing unviable commercial or contractor services. Isn't that a degree of conflict between those two bullets? If I'm not very commercial at the moment, I bet a little bit of help with my revenue spend could transform the situation. So there seems to be a non sequitur in there somewhere or other. And I would have thought there are several bus services in the borough, even though it may be a semi-dying form of service in its current form, that would actually benefit from, let's call it a subsidy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Jeffrey?
Just a brief one. In one of the appendixes, it talks about Hildenborough Crescent pruning of highway trees to ensure sufficient clearance. It's been completed, which is very welcome. But there is a wider point around some of the interventions. Certainly where my ward is adjacent to, there are buses that go around some of the smaller streets. And I wonder at some point whether or not KCC members in particular could take back the issue of how some of those smaller buses get around some of the smaller streets when some of the parking is pretty dire and there are blocks all over the place, because it's not just trees that block the buses getting through. Just a point, if you could take that back, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. So this item is for noting. So can the board agree that it is noted? Noted. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to item 15, which is the implementation of 2004 Traffic Management Act and ANPR cameras update, pages 35 to 37 of your agenda pack this evening. We don't have anyone to introduce this report to us, and it is for information. So is there anyone that would like to speak on the item? Councillor Garton.
Yes, indeed. It's another report which I feel like not noting tonight because there is nobody to give us any advice and answer questions on this one. The first point I would like to raise, and maybe we could minute that, that the tranche 1 sites at 2.2, page 35, are listed there. My understanding was that initially the weight restrictions in Leeds through the Leeds-Langley corridor was part of tranche 1. So why has that been abandoned? And I believe that even cameras were already installed for that purpose at certain junctions. So I don't know why Leeds is no longer in there. And the second point I would like to raise and just put a comment which hopefully could be minuted as well in one form or another is point 3.3. At page 36, the problems with the bus gate on King Street, Maidstone. At the Town Centre Management Group, which was actually attended by KCC transport officer, I think it was Sue Laporte who was there, and I hope she took my recommendations on board. It was the question is how can we allow blue badge holders to access the high street because they have blue badge parking in the high street. And the simple solution to that would be simply like you pay your ULEZ and congestion charge fees in London. You just go onto the internet to a website, scan your blue badge pass down and type in your registration number, and presto, you can just drive through and park there without the camera actually fining you for using that highway. The only other thing I would like to raise here, this whole King Street issue has been made to protect the smooth running of the buses. I think the much more pertinent point to restrict anybody driving through King Street except authorized vehicles like buses and taxis is because it is a pedestrianized zone. And so it is to protect pedestrians. That is the point I like to raise on this item.
Thank you. I know the report obviously says about it is a pedestrianised zone, but it does allow a significant amount of deliveries. So I think the report says that's what they're looking into now between KCC and NBC. I will take your question about the Leeds Langley weight restriction. Why is that abandoned to the report author, and we'll get you a response on that question. Councillor Burton?
It might be possible to deal with that more immediately, because I believe the reason is a little bit similar to the High Street issue. There is permitted HGV traffic through Leeds, and you would not be able to differentiate that with automatic cameras. That's why I believe that scheme was withdrawn.
Would anyone else like to? Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Yeah, I thought that proposal was to monitor the HGVs. It wasn't to stop HGVs, it was to monitor the number of HGVs going through Leeds Langley.
I mean, it's obviously a question that we need some clarification on, so I'll take that away and get KCC to provide the board with a response to that. You've got that. Yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other comments, that brings our last item, which was item 15, to a close, and I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much.